Nobody cares about Banjo Kazooie. Nobody cares about Banjo Kazooie? That's what Aaron Greenberg, the vice president of Xbox Games Marketing, supposedly said at an event promoting Microsoft's Flight Simulator 2024, a game for old rich guys who probably wouldn't touch a Banjo Kazooie game with a $1,500 10 iron. Yeah, this was reported by a Spanish YouTuber named Puerta al Sotano, and after people heard about it online, they flipped out. Because, well, it turns out a lot of people still actually care about Banjo Kazooie. Sometimes more than what's even healthy. The online backlash against both Aaron Greenberg and Microsoft was both swift and harsh. Take a look at just one of the many Reddit threads, created in response to hearing that a top Microsoft executive thought, "Nobody cares about Banjo Kazooie. Being an Xbox executive has to be the easiest job in the world. Do nothing and get paid millions."
Hey, come on now, be fair. You've also gotta be consistently wrong as well.
And lose lots of money too, right?
Damn, that's pretty harsh. But don't worry too much, because outside of a single report from this one Spanish YouTuber, whose name, Puerta al Sotano, aptly translates to door to the basement, yeah, his mom's basement, no one on planet Earth is yet to come forward to corroborate this crazy story. And on October 20th of 2024, Aaron Greenberg himself came forward on Twitter or X or whatever to explain that his comments were only intended as a sarcastic joke. Greenberg stated,
"I absolutely know how much Banjo Kazooie means to our fans and gamers everywhere. It holds a special place in my heart, growing up playing these classic games. Green heart emoji, Banjo, green heart emoji."
Growing up and playing these classic games? What in the Sam hell is Aaron Greenberg talking about? He was born in 1971. That means as of writing the script to this video, he's 53 years old. Aaron Greenberg didn't quote grow up playing the Banjo Kazooie games because he was almost in his 30s when the original game came out for the Nintendo 64 in 1998. By that time, not only had Aaron Greenberg finished puberty, but he had already graduated from school, worked at Nestle, the Walt Disney Company, and started his lengthy career at Microsoft. There's no way this dude was spending any amount of time playing the Banjo Kazooie games back when they were actually relevant. By the looks of things, I'm pretty sure he was probably more of a Microsoft Flight Simulator kind of guy. Like for sure. But what does Banjo Kazooie even mean to me? A somewhat younger old guy in his 40s. Well, until recently, it didn't mean very much at all. After all, I was 16 years old when Banjo Kazooie came out. I had an N64, sure, but that was the first console I ever purchased with my own money, from working an actual job. And at the time, I was really only interested in The Legend of Zelda and all those amazing pro wrestling games, starting with WCW NWO World Tour. What an amazing game. Check it out. It's the Scorpion Death Drop! Anyway, today in Future World 2024, I'm a dad, and I have a bunch of kids, and they all do sort of care about Banjo Kazooie and candy. And so this is why I am now handing my 10 iron over to them. 2 of them to be exact. The award-winning executive kids team. The ones that help me make all of our amazing videos here at Creative Cat Productions. And so without further ado, here they are to explain why it's such a big deal that Nintendo released Banjo Kazooie and now Banjo Tooie to the Nintendo Switch Online.
Banjo Kazooie? If you don't know what Banjo Kazooie is, well, it's a Nintendo 64 game about a bear named Banjo and a bird named Kazooie. And if you do know about Banjo, then you must certainly know about the controversy that surrounds Banjo Kazooie's infamous sequel, Banjo Tooie. Earlier this year, on October 17th, Nintendo made a surprise announcement that they were going to be beefing up their Nintendo Switch Online N64 game library by adding Banjo Tooie. A week later, on October 25th. And this got a lot of folks excited. People have been speculating for well over a year that Nintendo was finally going to re-release Banjo Tooie onto their subscription service, especially ever since the unexpected release of Banjo Kazooie in January of 2022.
Banjo Kazooie and Rare games appearing on Nintendo Switch Online? But those aren't Nintendo characters anymore. I thought they belonged to Microsoft now. What are we living in the Twilight Zone? The last game Rare made for a Nintendo console was Viva Pinata Pocket Paradise for the Nintendo DS way back in 2008, like back when the dinosaurs were still alive.
Hey, that's the year I was born.
Exactly.
So anyways, people have been waiting a long time for a moment like this. But the wait is over, and Creative Cat Productions is prepared to tell you whether or not playing Banjo Tooie is poopy.
Or not.
Banjo Tooie is the rather infamous sequel to Banjo Kazooie, a overly colored open-world collectathon. A collectathon describes any kind of game which revolves around finding required items in order to progress to the next stage. Sort of like Mario 64, except worse. I recently played the original version of Banjo Kazooie for the first time, and let me just say that the very colorful graphics and fast upbeat music, combined with whoever voice acted Banjo, gets to be a little bit overwhelming after a while.
Banjo Kazooie is a very full of life and colorful open world collectathon, featuring creative attacks and a fun story. But we're not talking about Banjo Kazooie, we're talking about Banjo Tooie, the surprisingly much darker sequel. The original Banjo Tooie for the N64 is a pretty good game, with some problems. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad game, but it's not perfect either, which is probably why there's a split on the internet, an unbalance in the force you could say, a war between people who love it and others who hate it. I don't want to give a very long, drawn-out review, so I'll just say the main problem right now, the levels and the talking. The game starts off when the witch from the first game is revealed to be alive and trapped under a boulder. Typical. Then a 13-minute long cutscene plays showing Mumbo Jumbo the Shaman, Bottles the Mole, and of course Banjo and Kazooie, gambling around a table. That's when it's revealed that the witch from the first game has sisters, and now they've come to save her. So they dig through the earth in their giant drill car, and use their witch magic to break the boulder that she's trapped under. And oh my god, the witch is all bones! But she's somehow still alive, and set on finding a body for herself. But apparently all the shaking from the drill car caused an earthquake. When Mumbo went out to check what was going on, he saw the witch coming and went to run back to the gambling room. While that was happening, Kazooie stole all of Mumbo's money. Then Mumbo comes back and says, "We have to get out of here. Magic is coming." So he and Banjo Kazooie run out, but Bottles stays behind because he thought all of the madness was a scheme to steal his money. The witch then fired her magic at the house, and everyone made it out safe. Everyone except for Bottles, who walks out covered in ass and then dies. He just straight up falls down on the floor right before his ghost flies away. For a little bit, he guides you through the tutorial, and then leaves. So you and Mumbo are left on your own, trying to stop the evil witch from taking over the land once again. As much as I like this game, this incredibly long and boring cutscene sucks. And there's plenty more talking. Boring, slow, painstaking talking. And while I'm at it, this whole part of the game just sucks. There's no life in the worlds, and I didn't know what the heck was going on. That's all until you get to Mayhem Temple, the first real world. After that, the game starts to get better, letting you control Mumbo, a golden statue, play in a kickball tournament, use fast travel with these teleport pads, unlock flight pads, turn into stuff in each level with the help of this lady's pool, unlock new moves like an egg gun, fire eggs, bomb eggs, you can use Kazooie as a handheld gun, and a whole lot of other cool stuff. As much as I like this game, I have to admit it has a lot of problems. For example, the enemies are just way too easy, to the point where I just walk past them for the sake of convenience. The only reason to fight at all is to get a replenish of health in the shape of these funny little honeycombs. The bosses are a different story though. They're all fun and creative. Of course, this was a game targeted towards 6-year-olds, but still, at times it got so boring I found myself jumping off of cliffs, because that was more fun than playing this game. I'm not joking. But that doesn't mean the whole game is boring. For instance, one of me and my sister's favorite parts of the game is when you take control of a giant golden statue, which I think the game uses very well. You have to move the golden statue to break through walls, go through quicksand, and other golden statue activities. But on the darker side, one of the most infamous claims about this game is the backtracking, and I can confirm it's not that bad. Sure, it's there, but it's honestly not that annoying, and sometimes you find something you missed. Like when my sister took a wrong turn going back to this hut and ended up in a whole new area I didn't know about. Talk about clueless. What makes the backtracking sting a little bit more is the huge levels. Like, this is crazy. But an unintended consequence of these huge levels is that there is some input lag, and a lot of slowdown in general. Overall, the game isn't bad, it just doesn't have enough stuff going on in a few places, and too much in other areas. And sometimes, it can be a little confusing, but it does get really fun in a few places. I wouldn't recommend going out of your way to play this, because I think Banjo Kazooie is a higher quality game, aside from it being for babies. But I really do think Banjo Tooie has a lot of potential, so maybe the remastered version will be better. Back to you, Claire.
Let's look at Banjo Tooie as it appears on Nintendo Switch Online. Right off the bat, I have to say, this game has crazy long cutscenes. The first one alone being 13 minutes long. Sure, that's how it was in the original Banjo Tooie, but having to sit through all of this again felt like torture.
Speaking of torture, the story is still the same, featuring Bottles being dead. Rip Bottles.
I wonder when his son Goggles will find out.
Probably when he misses dinner. Again.
Damn.
Something you didn't notice that I did is the noticeable improvement in the quality of the graphics. All of the polygon models have stayed the same, but the textures have been enhanced.
That's true, but I'm more interested in what you thought about the input lag.
Ah yes, the input lag. It wasn't that bad, and if you remember the original Banjo Tooie on the N64, it had the same amount of input lag and more slowdown. I think Nintendo kept the input lag for the remastered version because they wanted to keep the game authentic.
So they weren't being lazy?
Negative.
Cut! I just want to interrupt this video to explain that my kids don't seem to realize that Banjo Kazooie and Banjo Tooie on Nintendo Switch Online are merely being emulated, and they aren't some kind of remaster or remake. I think the confusion comes from the fact that Nintendo has upscaled the graphics. Sure, the game looks sharper than on original hardware, but they are fundamentally running the games by way of an emulator. Keeping this in mind will make all that follows more clear. Okay, back to the video. Action!
Don't you know that the Banjo Kazooie remaster doesn't suffer from any input lag?
I do know! But that game never had input lag initially, because the levels are far smaller than the ones in Banjo Tooie. It was the much larger levels and more complicated game mechanics that caused the sequel to suffer from input lag and slowdown. And on top of that, the remastered version doesn't have enough noticeable input lag to make the gameplay laggy. But speaking of game mechanics, Banjo Tooie has a lot more cool moves and gimmicks than Banjo Kazooie. Of course, you have the original Banjo Kazooie game mechanics, like flying, all of the basic attacks, the gold invincibility feathers, and swimming. But Banjo Tooie also has extra game mechanics that weren't in the original, like fire eggs, bomb eggs, A-game, beak drill, and a ton of other stuff I already mentioned earlier.
But perhaps the biggest complaint about Banjo Tooie, and one we can 100% confirm, is the backtracking! Backtracking is a feature throughout Banjo Tooie, ranging from adventurous sidetracking to pure torture, that made me wish I was scrubbing toilets while listening to 2000s pop.
The backtracking never really bothered me. I actually enjoyed discovering new parts of the game, like when we stumbled across the waterfall caverns in the mine level.
Oh come on, you can't deny how annoying the backtracking was in the Prospector's Lost Mole side quest.
That backtracking was pretty bad, because we had to teleport back to the mine level to find his lost mole, which kind of sucks.
And we were kind of forced to find him if we wanted a Jiggy in return.
And you know, we've gotta have our Jiggies.
Alright, I don't think that was in the script. Anyway, when we got back to the Mayhem Temple level, because we already unlocked Kazooie's ability to drill his beak into boulders in the mines level, we could use Kazooie to break a boulder covering a flight pad.
Which lets you actually fly! The adventure gets even more fun when you enter a temple and the game turns into a first-person shooter with Kazooie as your weapon, obviously. The controls in this part felt great, although they were a little bit sensitive.
Dude, how many first-person shooter games have you actually played?
3 or 4.
I wonder what we'll get at the end of these slightly sacred and actually sacred rooms, as this target Zandude calls them. But will this lead us to the Prospector's Mole? Or are we being sidetracked?
I bet we'll get something great at the end. 30 minutes later. It turns out the prize was a giant and slightly unfair boss fight against the Mayan god of many shooting targets, and 2 Jiggies.
I'm pretty sure they made that target Zandude up.
You kill the boss by shooting at the targets all over its body, while the base of the boss rotates and shoots darts at you. The catch is that the more you shoot him, the faster he shoots back.
But all of this, while awesome, ended up sidetracking us away from our original quest of finding the mole. Instead, we fought a Mayan boss for the reward of 2 Jiggies. I hate being sidetracked by something we should have completed when we were still in the Mayhem Temple level while backtracking. Of course, in order to complete the game, you need to collect every single Jiggy among other items. But I really wish we found this part when we first played the Mayhem level.
When we were in the Mayan level, after we defeated the Mayan boss of many shooting targets, we had to break one of the temple walls you had previously broken down by kicking with the giant golden Goliath statue. This time you have the option of using the golden statue or the bomb eggs, which we found in the mines level.
At the foot of the gate that keeps the mole stuck, there's a padlock with a star, a moon, and a sun. Even though the code uses only 3 symbols, the code itself is 6 digits long, meaning that there are too many possibilities for us to just guess. Unless you travel to the other set of giant stone doors to turn into a Stony, a rock creature. Transforming into a Stony allows you to understand the code told to you by the Stony at the gate of the mole. Playing as a Stony makes you very vulnerable, however, because you can't attack enemies, so you have to be careful.
Are you all as confused as I am right now?
After that, you have to go all the way back to the other set of stone doors to transform back into Banjo and Kazooie. Once you go back to the mole and talk to her, you must break the boulder that is blocking the mole from going to the prospector's house. Breaking the boulder is only possible if you've previously unlocked the Build Drill move in the mines level, which lets Kazooie drill his beak directly into rocks. After allowing the mole to pass through the tunnel, you are rewarded a Jiggy.
Keep in mind, unlocking the fast travel pads makes this part a lot easier, because it cuts down on the time it takes to travel from place to place. But still, having to travel back and forth this much sucks. These giant levels work in Mario 64, but in a game where you can basically walk, jump, and run, and not very agilely, it's just boring. But speaking of getting around fast, for the last third of our playthrough, I had a cheat activated called Super Banjo.
Hey, isn't that cheating?
Not really. It just makes Banjo walk twice as fast, and it also doubles Kazooie's speed.
Cool, but how did you activate it? You didn't try sticking a Game Genie in our N64, did you?
Nah, I'd never do that. There's actually an NPC from the first game that gives you cheats, called Cheeto. Every time you find 5 of his pages hidden in the levels, he'll give you a cheat code, but you have to walk to Spiral Mountain from the first game to get them. Once you get a cheat, you have to go to the Mayan level and find this pyramid in these stone doors. Go into the pyramid and type in the word Cheeto on this really hard to aim keyboard, and then type the cheat. Keep in mind, when you spell out Cheeto, the letters will go red, but when you spell out the cheats, there will be no reaction. This is normal. Jiggy Wiggy Special opens up all worlds. Talk about a cheat code name. Nest King gives you infinite eggs and feathers. Super Banjo makes Banjo move faster. Super Batty makes enemies move faster. Play it again, son unlocks all cinemas in replay mode. Jiggy's Cast List allows you to watch the cast list character parade. Feathers doubles the number of feathers you can carry. Fall Proof prevents you from taking damage when falling from great heights. Eggs doubles the number of eggs you can carry. Honeyback slowly refills your energy bar. Jukebox allows you to play any song you've heard in the game at Jolly's Inn. Get Jiggy makes signs available in Master Jiggy Wiggy's house. Homing makes eggs home in on the nearest enemy. And that's it.
I'm definitely going to remember all of that. Speaking of remember when I remembered when we found that bird that looked like Big Bird but was suffocating from poisonous gas?
I do! That was Canary Mary. We found her trapped in a cage riding on a swing. It was really sad.
It actually reminded me of the Sesame Street movie, Follow That Bird, the movie where Big Bird ends up riding a swing in a cage after being captured by the circus.
We did manage to set her free before she forced us to race her in a minecart. I cannot tell you with words how hard this was, but I sure can show you. Keep in mind, there are some very creative methods of pressing the A button as fast as you can, and I actually used some of them to beat Canary Mary. But I don't feel like showing you all of that in this video. So if you're having problems with Canary Mary, you can look it up on YouTube. There's plenty of videos showing you how to beat her.
The camera controls are usually really good in this game, but the camera angle changes every 6 seconds in this part. Gameplay wise, there are no issues that we experience with the gameplay compared to the original.
All of the moves are here from the original Banjo Tooie, and you must collect all of the jiggies, just like you did in the early 2000s. But keep in mind that this game is only fun with the N64 controller that's compatible with the Nintendo Switch. Trying to play this game with Joy-Cons is awful, because the controls are mapped completely differently. And if you're playing with Joy-Cons from 2018, and they have a lot of drift, you might as well give up before you even try playing this game. Overall, I thought this was a good game, coming from someone who doesn't mind backtracking, to an extent of course. To me, the inconsistency is this game's biggest problem. You go from the empty and boring Jinzhou village to the mines where there's too much going on. You go from baby level one-hit enemies to a Mayan god. You go from a concise, well-made game for babies to a drawn-out, slightly less well-made game for edgy 8-year-olds. What I've gathered from my own experience playing Banjo Tooie is that the game is way too big. The levels are both simultaneously too big and too empty. The story makes no sense, and the game has a strangely dark undertone. Banjo Tooie is so weird it feels unfinished. If the developers had made improvements such as filling out the levels, cutting down on the non-existent story, cut out the dark undertone, and made the gameplay a more consistent experience, then this game would have had the potential to become an 8 out of 10.
But does this game add any value to the Nintendo Switch Online's game library? Yes! If you're one of those people who enjoyed this game back in the early 2000s, then you will have a great time playing this game. On top of that, Banjo Tooie's predecessor, Banjo Kazooie, has already been a part of the Nintendo Switch for a few years now. So why wouldn't Nintendo finish what they started and include Banjo Tooie? People love this franchise so much, I think including Banjo Tooie makes more people happy than unhappy. I give this game a 5.5 out of 10, an average score for a mediocre game.
And I give it a...
what's that?
Who keeps doing that?
I knew it!
Do you want to race?
No way, let's get out of here!
It looks like you're one jiggy sort. And you know what that means.
Wow, sounds to me like everyone's having a good time. Personally, I'd rather wash my socks than play a Banjo Kazooie game. I mean, I really like washing my socks, what can I say? But maybe if I'd been a neglected 8-year-old latchkey kid back in 1998, instead of an edgy teenager with long hair and a truck, I would have had nothing to do except wander around a giant empty 3D world, collecting jiggies as well. Anyway, what do you all think of Banjo Tooie? Were you an 8-year-old back in 1998? Or were you a 27-year-old man baby like Aaron Greenberg? Did you play these games? Do you like them? Seriously, we're not judging, but I don't know, are we missing something here? Please let us know how wrong we are, and more, in the comments. And thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate it. Bye-bye now.
I changed my mind. It's a 3 out of 10.